Which New York City restaurants are most likely to have mice or rat violations? That's a great way to start off a video. So the least likely place to have a rodent infestation would be a donut shop. On average, it seems like they must be keeping that stuff pretty clean. Then it goes hamburgers, juice/smoothie, coffee, and then Tex-Mex. I always find the word Tex-Mex to be like the most strange term. We do not use this in California. Basically, all our food is Tex-Mex, I guess. But there seems to be a pretty big jump when you get to these seafood restaurants. Weirdly, frozen desserts is pretty high. Why would mice and rats like that? Then we have American, Asian fusion, sandwiches, chicken, Japanese, and it gets pretty unique down here. Oh my goodness, and everything above this dashed line means that on average, at least 35% of these restaurants have some sort of evidence of rodents, I guess, being there. Is this real? That seems like really high. Evidence of mice or evidence of rat violations. Is this of all time? Hopefully. But then the worst of the worst, it comes to Thai food, Indian food, and then Caribbean. And the Caribbean is kind of destroying it. Actually, it's like pretty much a Thai, not really, but the Indian and Caribbean food is so far out there. Yeah, this is literally saying percentage of restaurants with a rodent violation. This is absolutely terrifying. I don't even know if I want to be reading this. I mean, all these places are pretty high, just kind of in general. I think I'm just gonna exclusively eat at donut shops from now on. Although Ratatouille is one of my favorite Pixar movies. EU countries pushing to label nuclear power as green power. This might be one of the very few maps I've seen where it's not just Western and Eastern Europe divided. Generally speaking, when it comes to this stuff, like it kind of just goes down the same lines all the time. France is the big outlier though. They sent a letter to the EU requesting nuclear power be considered green energy. But then on the other side of things, the Baltics and Greece did not. They didn't go in line with all their fellow neighbors somewhat. Finland and Sweden disagreed. So I'm wondering like how much nuclear power are coming from some of these green states. Maybe that's why this is actually kind of a unique map. They can benefit from it somehow. I guess to be fair though, some of the blue countries want to name natural gas as green energy instead though. I feel like this topic has been coming up a lot lately. Percentage of population describing themselves as not religious. And this is focusing in on a very specific part of the world. Between 2012 and 2014, as you can see, there's a lot of red. The highest we can see a decade ago is in Tunisia, and they're only at 16%. Then about 6 years later, and Algeria and Libya have really had huge changes. Even Egypt, I mean, they jumped from 2.9% to 10%. Same with Morocco. Yemen's the only place that went significantly down, but then when you single out the population that are between the ages of 15 and 29, things look even crazier. Libya jumps up to 35%, Tunisia's at 45%, that's almost half. Even Egypt almost doubles to 20%. Something's definitely going on here, and I never really expected that. How young can children be sent to prison across the world? Now we're talking. So the minimum age recommended by the United Nations is 14, so all the green countries are following that procedure. And then here's one of the outliers, Australia, which is at 10. And would you look at that, the US is beating the Aussies. We sending kids that are 7 years old to prison. I don't know why that's funny to me. That shouldn't be funny to me. That doesn't sound right. There's differences, right? Between juvie and prison. I'm pretty sure you have to be like a really evil 7-year-old though. Like borderline Satan. Okay, I just found out this map does include juvenile detention centers. They ain't just getting thrown in there with some 30-year-old foos. So that's actually making me think like Argentina, that's pretty high. You have to be 16 to be like incarcerated. I know some evil 12-year-olds. Clearly these lawmakers have never been in a Call of Duty lobby. Africa is also mostly red, but then there is these two very strange outliers. Both former Portuguese colonies as well, so maybe that has something to say about it. Although Portugal was not following what their colonies was doing. I like this map a bit more because it breaks down the US states, even though it's still not that different. Here in the US, you don't even need to be 7 years old. You could literally be 0, like a month-year-old, and they throwing yo ass in the pen. Weirdly, except for some of these southern states though, look at Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. You don't see that very often. You gotta be at least 10. This is literally a first for me. I've never seen something like that from these states. California's still throwing those 0-year-olds in there. Well, if you live outside of the states and you're under the age of 12, hurry up, time's running out. Time to go out there and commit some criminal offenses. And if you happen to be in Germany, Denmark, Sweden, a lot of Central Europe, these countries have made it legal to escape from prison. Escaping from prison here is not a crime. I kind of like that law. Like maybe they're making their incarceration centers so brutal and so tough to get out of that, like, yeah, if you do get your freedom somehow, well, you deserved it. Because I don't know how you swam like 16 miles off this island and like fought a couple of sharks along the way. Now I'm gonna assume that Sweden is not that Nordic country that doesn't even like fence around their prisons. I think that's like Finland. One of these countries in here doesn't even build like barriers. Technically they could just like walk out. Yeah, Finland uses an open prison system. There are no gates or locks. Inmates come and go in their own cars. There's also internet access in their cell? What is this? Oh my god, send me to prison in Finland. I get to play in virtual reality. Finland is a different breed, man. Strange that I learned it's not illegal to try to escape from prison in Germany, but if you break any laws along the way of your escape, then yeah, they can charge you for that. Okay. Wind gusts in Europe over the course of the last 2.5 months. This is why, what's that called? Meteorology is so confusing. Like, this just seems absolutely unpredictable. No wonder they can't tell me if it's gonna rain tomorrow or not. And am I the only one that just realized that, like, when they say there's a 30% chance of rain, that doesn't mean that it's not gonna rain in your area. It is gonna rain in your area, except the spot that you're in, there's only a 30% chance that it will hit your spot. Does that make any sense? That took me years to understand. Here's a comic about how progressive tax works. 70% off this, please. Just a pile of money. This is not what goes down. This is false. The tax rate applies to all of your income. The way it works is when you get to a certain level, that's when the 70% starts to apply. So after, like, let's say 100,000. If you made 120,000, then that 20,000 is going to be taxed to 70%. How will I feed my family now? False. Taxes deprive you of your hard-earned money. Gonna just stay quiet. How will I buy my 8th Lamborghini now? You will probably never get a high tax rate if you haven't been born rich. And it looks like America for the last 100 years at least has done some sort of marginal tax rate of above 50%. If they could just teach these first 2 panels in like high school or something like that, I'm gonna assume that's gonna be pretty good for most people to know. Here's a map showing each star represent the capital city of each country. You can somewhat make out the continents here, but I never realized just how much the islands throw things off. It would look like this is a really densely compacted continent, but that's just the Caribbean. Same with the Pacific Ocean. All these places over here make it look like there's a lot going on when it's mostly just water too. Russia and China own a bunch of land over this way, so it looks really empty. Nobody puts their capital in the Sahara Desert in Africa, apparently. Kind of understandable. This would make kind of an okay flag, like an okay world flag. No, actually, this is overly complicated to make. Never mind. I don't think the Martians would be able to understand this is Earth. Emperor Tigerstar's map of the American Civil War. I've been watching Emperor Tigerstar since I was like in high school, like literally for 10 years. So the big thing about this, it's 1862, and I've always been surprised at how little progress the South really made. Like, it was kind of a big stalemate. Kind of reminds me of like World War I in the US. The South really like wasn't able to do much though. I mean, look, they had a part of West Virginia, but then they're just getting stabbed right through Louisiana. By 1864, it's already almost over. They've lost all their gains, although they did like some pushing right here in Virginia. Got pushed back. There's also like little small skirmishes going on. Like, it seems like 20 dudes just like walks in and then they walk out, and then boom, these states have surrendered. Of course, it's going to be the northern parts first. Virginia was the first state to surrender. I didn't know that, but I should have known. Then the Carolinas followed. Florida was just now beginning to be invaded. Seems like they kind of surrendered a little bit early, but oh, look at Oklahoma was still going for a second there. I also find it interesting to see like the starting states were only Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi. It's like the coastal ones, and then by the end of the month, so this blockade goes down, and then literally like a month or 2 later, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, like more northern states follow in. And couldn't there have been more? Wasn't Missouri on the line? Weren't they thinking about it? How many more states did they really need? That's what I wonder. Oh, I am forgetting that they did take a big chunk out of the New Mexico territory for a little bit. This is really just getting me excited for Victoria 3. 10 films directed by Wes Anderson and the actors he used. He enjoys using very similar actors, apparently. The big one being Bill Murray, though, with this line where he was like, is he in every single one or almost? But just about all of these actors have been in at least 4 of his films. He loves reusing these guys. Owen Wilson is pretty close behind Bill Murray, and then my personal favorite, Willem Dafoe. I'll pretty much watch anything he's in. Although, I must admit, I don't think I've seen a single Wes Anderson movie, to be honest. I have not seen literally any of these. Music revenue by format, starting in 1975. Of course, vinyl, very popular back in the day. Then here come the 80s. I remember cassettes. I remember like pulling out the tape and like ruining all my cassettes. Then there's CDs. CDs in the 90s. Every decade had its like own little thing. While CDs actually lasted way longer than most of the other things. DVDs? Music revenue was made off of DVDs? How's that happening? Then 2010 comes along. CDs are overall still selling so much though. Who was still buying CDs in 2010? Did y'all not know about LimeWire? Boom, finally downloads pass in 2013, and then streaming is gonna just explode. It is destroying everything here in 2020. They still make $29 million off off of DVDs though. How does that work? And what is other? Look at vinyl actually. Vinyl being around for 50 years and they're still making this much money off of it? More than CDs themselves. Aw, poor cassettes and tapes. Overall though, in order for streaming to catch the all-time income, it's gonna take a while. Over the course of the CD lifespan, they were able to make, what is this? Is that a trillion? Can't you just put a trillion? I mean, people were literally buying those things like $20 albums for just one song. I don't even know if they're ever gonna be able to catch up to these numbers. The cost of a Big Mac in each country, we're starting in 2001. Norway has the most expensive Big Macs at almost $5. It is $6 for a Big Mac in 2007, 2008. Oh, Norway starts to get those prices down. Why does McDonald's hate Norway? Or is Norway like taxing McDonald's a whole bunch? Here comes Venezuela. Oh, is this just gonna be like a economy thing? Inflation, stuff like that? Venezuela was really high for a second there. Now Switzerland's #1. Weird to see in 2018 it was cheaper than to buy a Big Mac in 2007. Venezuela, I think with the record, now $8 for a Big Mac. How cheap it is in Russia, $2? Gotta go to Russia, just live off McDonald's. You could probably look into this and learn a lot about economies, but I don't know where to begin. That was interesting. Net growth during the pandemic out of the top 20 billionaires. So just doing all of them combined over the course of the last, what, 2 years? Not even, like 18 months. They were all able to obtain 85% more wealth. The big one being Elon Musk. His net worth increased by over 700%. I don't even know what he was doing during this time. I get Jeff Bezos. Everyone was buying off of that Amazon stuff. Bill Gates did all right. Not quite as good as some of these other players, though. Warren Buffett got that old money, but he's still making it. The Lizard Man himself also kind of doing pretty all right. It really seems like it's being carried by, like, the big boys. All the big boys is what increased a lot. Some of the other ones did okay, but it's like, you know, 30% besides these ones. Why didn't my net wealth increase by 700%? That's not fair. Percent of Asian restaurants with high Yelp ratings in major US cities. Now, I would assume that most popular Asian restaurants would probably be more closer to the Pacific states. I mean, it's closer, easier to get to Asia from there. Portland doing pretty good. They got some good ones up there. San Jose, San Francisco aren't quite as well, though. Look at San Diego at 69%. Everything in the East Coast, though, is struggling. Wow, Boston really not a fan. Now, could this just be like the people themselves don't like Asian food, or are the restaurants just sucking? Maybe a little bit of both. But yeah, they're struggling over here a lot more. But no one is going to beat Honolulu, Hawaii. They are loving that Asian food out there. Oh, and the size of the circle also shows exactly how many. So even though Portland's got this 72%, there doesn't seem to be that many. And I'm going to assume that if you have a lot of Asian restaurants, that's going to probably drag down the average because there's got to be more bad ones out there. The more you get. Boston doesn't have very many Asian restaurants and they have low ratings. And here's that map on a simple bar graph. These percentages are based off of the restaurants that have at least 4 stars. So on average, 75% of the Asian restaurants in Honolulu have at least 4 stars. I'm wondering if the environment somewhat like skews this though. Like, yeah, we in Hawaii, we out here on a vacation. Of course, you're gonna just like probably be open to the food. But if you in cold, rainy Boston, you just got done with your blue-collar job, and if everything isn't perfect, yeah, you probably might give it a bad rating. You really can't like judge off of Yelp. Yelp is so not trustworthy. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch. I've learned a lot about this thing. There's just this massive pile of garbage that's like moving throughout the Pacific. You can literally see it from like the sky or something like that. Well, yeah, you can, because apparently it is the size of Texas. It's more than twice the size of Texas. And it's like this giant moon just orbiting the islands of Hawaii. I'm sure Hawaii is probably constantly having to clean that up. Is it possible for the currents just to like slam all of it into like California's coast? Is that gonna happen one day? Needless to say, that would pretty much devastate all the beaches out there. But 46% of the total mass is made up of discarded fishing gear. So is that what's going on? Like they like release a couple nets and then those nets slowly gather up all the plastic bottles and all our waste. 53% is mega plastics. 26 is macroplastics. I don't know what the hell that is. It's 80,000 tons of garbage though. How is there that much out there? I guess if you think about it, like how often we throw away things, like have you ever done that project? We have to like keep track of all the things you throw away in like a week. I guess I can understand how like 80,000 tons got out into the ocean. 1.8 trillion pieces of plastic, and it's 1.6 million kilometers? How? Okay, this is getting wild. Is it just sitting out here off the coast too? I thought the current kind of moves it a bit. If we're lucky, like Godzilla will just slowly eat it all. And big thanks to the October patrons: Majestic Unicorn, Papi Druwu, I Love Marks, Drew's Thick Breaks and Girlfriend, Drew's Argentinian Grandpa, AryanAfterHours, BringBackPolandball,
Alfonso M6,
Barnsky W,
Dalton D,
Full Send Nic,
Ivan Lima,
Jesse C,
LuxembourgLover,
Max Cooper,
McBlorf,
Mind Brothers 999X2, and Stormtrooper 501. Thank you.